Welcome back to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two best friends recap and dissect romance novels while going on tangents, being hilarious, and offering each other unconditional support. This week, we've got another guest episode. This time, Erin teams up with Sara from the podcast The DC TV Report. Here they are with Beautiful Player by Christina Lauren.
Okay. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Erin.
How are you?
I am so embarrassingly excited to be doing this. You have no idea. I have been thrilled about this since you asked me.
So, HBs, if you're listening to this, Melody is on maternity leave, and we're actually recording this it's September now. It's September 1st.
It is 900 degrees outside. I assume people are going to be listening to this in parkas when it finally comes
December,
out.
January. That's funny because it's 40 degrees outside here. It's actually a little bit cold. I'm wearing my furry slippers.
My brain can't even. The readout on my husband's car earlier was 100, honestly. So
that's incredible. Okay, so here's what I know of you. Is we launched the podcast. Mm-hmm. We told all our friends. Well, Melody told all her friends. I didn't tell any of my friends because I was scared. Melody told all her friends, which included Tanya of Knight in Shining Armor fame. And then Tanya immediately was like, Sara, you've got to listen to this podcast. And I didn't know you before that, but you were a professor at the college that I went to and later coached at, Bradley University. But that's all I know of you. So if you can tell us how you know, how did Tanya know to be like, Sara?
So I know Tanya, again, because of Bradley University, where I teach journalism in the Department of Communication. And Tanya coached for the team. You know, she's a longtime member of the speech team and has transitioned to being a coach and valuable resource. So I met her when she was teaching that year, basically, that she was there. And then she finished her degree there. So that's how we got to know each other. And of course, you know, Tanya, we talk about everything. And that definitely, mostly it includes TV. I'm also a TV person. I can get into that. But it includes a lot of books, book recommendations. I found out she reads romance and I was like, oh, well, I guess we're even more best friends now. So this is how she knew when it came out. Oh, I have a podcast that you need to listen to. So she's good like that. She keeps me in good content.
And then you became big podcast, supporter of the podcast. And then we were able to bond over the X-Files. And it turns out we should be best friends. And I was there at Bradley too that year. I don't know how we missed each other.
I was very fresh that year. I'm a withered crone now. But that year, I was so trying to keep my head above water. I was just trying to survive. Those early years were, you're new at the job. You don't have experience to pull from. Now, 5 minutes before class, I'm like, ooh, I better finish off the syllabus. Here we go.
Which, speaking of, that's how I now feel about the podcast. I was like, oh gosh, I'm doing this one with Sara. I should probably take notes about the story because that's usually Melody's job. And I'm like, okay, at the beginning of the chapter, I'll write a little summation of what happens in the chapter. 3 sentences long most. And I was like, let me get my notes up. And then Sara pulls out
24 printed pages of notes and quotes and reactions.
I don't know what I said or did to make you think this was necessary. I'm so sorry.
Nothing. Okay, first of all, you two come across as incredibly prepared in all the podcasts, so I assumed. Not so. That's a lie.
There have been times I didn't know the name of the author, the name of the character, the race of the character. I mean, I don't know how you got prepared out of this podcast, but we didn't even start making notes until episode 10, and now we've kind of fallen off again.
Okay, well, in my defense, this is 16-point font because you have to be able to, read at a glance. That's just the rules of podcasting. So, it's artificially inflated here, but I have summaries for every chapter. I have sent my notes from my Kindle that I made over here. And this is how, I'm sure if I was about 4 episodes into this, I'd be like, oh, fuck that. But for this one, I am prepared. I am ready to go.
Great. And is this how you prepare for your podcast?
Oh, gosh. Do I have a podcast? That's
You
so
do.
wild.
What is it about?
So my podcast is the DC TV Report, where my co-host Edward O'Hare and I run down the live-action DC television shows every week. That's things like Arrow and Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow and The Flash and things like Lucifer and iZombie and new shows coming up on the DC Universe and elsewhere. So we do recaps, we run down all the news, and it is a bit of preparation because we have to, search for the news and pull it all together. And it requires recapping and then giving it just short and then giving our thoughts on those shows. So it takes a little bit of work. But yeah, you're right. We put it in a Google Doc. I sort of copy and paste and I just keep it on my screen and it's pretty low key. But yeah, if you're a fan of those DC shows, I don't want to run down all of them for you because there's quite a few, but we will have content for you. We're delightful. Ed's the comic book guy. I'm the one who's like, well, if you refer back to the principles of feminist theory in analyzing this, and he's very patient with me about that. And so, we bring a lot.
That seems like there would be a very clear Venn diagram group that would be into your podcast and our podcast. So
there are going to be people who, super love certain comic booky shows and people who super love the books that we're talking about here that I do think there could be some overlap. So I'm hoping some of my people find you and I'm hoping some of your people find us and that could be a lot of fun.
Especially the feminist theory part. I know there's going to be people that are like, what? Comic books and feminist theory?
Oh, yes. I mentioned this actually on your on the Facebook page, just in a comment where Mel was talking about having a spirited debate about the quality of romance novels as literature. So I mentioned this in the comment, but I teach media, race, and gender, and I have a whole unit that I do on comics and video game representation. So that's race, gender, class, etc. And then I also have a section on romance novels because it occurred to me, I'm the professor. I get to pick the content. And if I want to talk about the inherent sexism and how quickly people dismiss and mock romance novels, by God, I'm going to do it. And so every semester I introduce a bunch of sports comm majors who are just there because they really love basketball bra to
and they need that
novels.
one comm credit.
They do. It's writing intensive. I make them write. And we talk about, why we should not be so quick to dismiss romance novels. And at the end of the semester, a couple semesters ago, I did have one student who said, I had never considered it before. You opened my eyes. I picked up my first book and I loved it. And I was just like, this is why I teach. I'm so happy.
And okay, speaking of preparedness, I have the wrong book up. I have the book Melody and I are doing this week. Close book, bring up Beautiful Player by Christina Lauren. So I said, hey, we can do any book you want to do. I'm just so happy you're doing this while Melody's out. And this was in the list? You sent a list, right?
I sent a rather large list because I was like, okay, much like Alexander Hamilton, I'm so sorry. I'm not throwing away my shot. And so I sent a list of every book I've ever thought, oh, that would be so much fun to talk about. And this was on here. And as it turns out, Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, this was already on your list too, right?
Yeah, this was already in our queue. One of our 5-star reviewers already recommended this. So I'm sorry if that's you. You probably are getting this maybe 3 to 4 months later than you would because we're waiting for Melody's baby to come out. So sorry, whoever recommended this one.
I'm going to do my best to be as sparkling as Mel. I make no promises, but I'll do my best.
I know Melody has a compulsive, maybe neurosis is the right word, about me replacing her with somebody else. So I'm not going to say you're more sparkly than Melody, but I would say just a fraction, a small, just about as sparkly as Melody.
I bring a different kind of sparkle, but Mel's is the original. She's the OG sparkle.
OG sparkle. If I say you're as sparkly as her, she's going to be like, what? Anyway. Okay. All right. So,
Erin, I have a question for you. Have you read any Christina Lauren before?
No, but it's been recommended over and over and over again. And I don't think, I shouldn't say no. I maybe have in the before times. But I never really I wasn't a Goodreads person. I just kind of consumed romance novels and then they were done and then they kind of left my brain. There are ones that stuck with me, of course, but I wasn't cataloging. I wasn't in the Romancelandia community. I wasn't talking about them with anybody.
Sure.
So it's possible I have, but I don't remember reading any Christina Lauren.
Gotcha.
Well, why do you ask?
Well, I was just curious if you knew the story of the author. And
no.
Okay, so
it's 2 authors, right?
It's 2 people, exactly. It's Christina Hobbs and or Lauren. I already have screwed this up.
It's okay. Making mistakes is one of the theses of this podcast. It's one of the things we love doing.
24 pages of notes, and I don't have the woman names for the two authors. But no, it's best friends named Christina and Lauren who write together. And their first book was 50 Shades of Grey fanfic.
Oh.
And that is HBs who are reading this book and this book only and haven't read anything else in the universe. Bennet and Chloe are Christian Grey and Anna Steele. That's what that was. And so they had done this fanfic and they reworked it and they published it. And it's why initially I was a little reluctant to pick them up, actually, because I thought 50 Shades fanfic is not a thing I need in my life. I just don't need that in my life. But I did, thank God, because it's great. And when I started thinking about which book would I want to do if it was Christina Lauren, so many of them are so good and so good in such different ways. It was hard to pick. So Beautiful Player already being on your list was perfect. So
and I think this is the one and only Christina Lauren that people have recommended on 5-star reviews. So this has to be a favorite.
Perfect.
So we have Will, the hero, and Hannah, the heroine, a.k.a. Ziggy to her family and friends. And she's at an art show with her brother and her father. And I love this. She's going through the art and she doesn't like anything because it's modern art and she doesn't get it. Whereas her brother and dad are like,
very. It's just the man's inhumanity of man here is just, it's so.
And her brother is talking to her about, first she sees one painting that's a double helix, and then across the canvas is written, "We all know interspecies romance is weird," and that makes her laugh. And she's like, "I like this one." They're like, "You would," which I was like, "Oh, I like her already." And then they start talking about how she needs to like get out. Like she's she's some kind of scientist at a lab. And they're like, you spend too many hours in the lab, like using this as an example of like, that's the only painting you like is the science one. You are spending way too many hours there and you need friends, you need fun. And I loved this. Her brother says, "You're so smart, you're fun, you're social, you're a pretty girl." And she says, Woman. I corrected in a mumble.
And my note on that was,
good work.
Yes, stick up for yourself, woman. And I think
I like her.
Exactly. And I think why are they doing the intervention? Well, they're worried about her, and why they worry about her, I think, because she's the baby. She's, they're protective. Right. So it was an interesting snapshot of how the family sees her. I loved the description of the family dynamic. I'd often noted how it seemed the most prominent personality traits of my parents, vigilance, charm, caution, impulse, and drive, had been divided cleanly and without contamination among their 5 offspring. Vigilance and drive were headed into a battle in the middle of a Manhattan soiree. I loved that.
So is there a book does this series follow the 5 offspring or just the friend? They're Will's friends, right? Oh, both. Okay.
So book 1 is Chloe and Bennet. Book 2 is Sara and Max.
Yeah.
And that's probably my favorite. And I realized, well, we can get into this as we get into Will in this, but Will is a big part of that book too. And he's this irrepressible player. He's the fun guy who bounces through life. And so here he falls so hard and so fast for Hannah. In some ways it's a little jarring because if you're reading this in a void, you don't know him from before. But book 2 Will is player Will. So I think it's kind of interesting.
I noticed that a little bit because I felt like this book glossed over a little bit some of the details that I would have wanted about Will. Like they it goes without saying what his job actually is. Like I think I figured out mid-book that he was a scientist as well. And I was like, oh, why didn't she make that more clear? And it's
because
probably
it was
clearer
book 2.
In the first
exactly.
2. Yeah.
So I read these, I slammed through this whole series, 2016 maybe. So it didn't occur to me how reading this out of order, out of place, might change the character motivations a little bit. But we know Will. We know Will from the first book. And then later books have Niles and Jensen, I want to say, both get books. So it does. It's a little bit of both. It does the...
And those are her 2 brothers. Yeah.
So they get some too... even George, at some point, you get a little bit of a final story for George, Sarah's assistant. So, they tease out everybody.
So, at the end of this conversation at the art gallery, so Jensen is friends with Will, our hero. So, Jensen, her brother, friends with Will, the hero. He says Will's also living in the city, which is New York City. You should call him and you guys should go out. So it turns out Will had an internship with Hannah's father when he was in college, and she was, 15 or young?
Impressionable. She was impressionable.
Yes. Yeah. And he lived at their house because his family was on the West Coast. And so she grew up in her teenage years just being like, this is the hottest man I've ever seen in my life. And he'd come home for holidays to their house because he couldn't afford to fly home. And one time he hooked up with her sister and she's like, oh my God, my sister's so lucky. He played the bass in a band. He had tattoos.
I want to say at one point she describes him as walking around the house like it was offensive to him to wear shirts.
Yes,
so he's
I remember that.
Shirtless all the time. So I think when her brother says, you should call Will, her ears perk up like a dog when you say treat. What?
Yeah.
What? Will? And so all of a sudden, all right, I'll call Will.
Can I just say, Melody does that, puts the hands on her head and does, literally does that whenever there's food smells. She'll be walking down the street. She will take her hands and put them on her head and go, if there's the smell of grilling nearby. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that. The exact same thing you just did.
I'm trying to fill her shoes as best I can, and that includes hand ears.
I think if she saw this guy walking down the street, she'd do the same thing. As soon as Jensen says, go hang out with Will, she's got a 3-page description on how hot Will is and how she grew up just wanting him so bad. And he's now in his 30s and he's some kind of scientist and he lives in the city. So she's decided she's going to call him her brother once or two. But she makes a huge mistake. And she calls him at 4:30 in the morning?
Oh my God. Hannah, girl. Oh, so socially awkward. She is so clueless. And to her credit, she realizes, oh, you were asleep. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, she's like, the second chapter opens up, 1 ring, 2. I stopped pacing long enough to pull back the curtain and peek out the window, frowning up at the sky. It was still dark out, but I reasoned it was bluer than black and starting to smudge pink and purple along the horizon, so technically morning. I'm like, no. And she's never called this person before in her life, so she doesn't even know that the brother has given him a heads up or not. It's rough.
Yeah.
So she wakes him up and he's like, she's like, I didn't wake you, did I? And he's like, oh no, my alarm was going to go off in an hour. So, So they kind of talk through, hey, let's hang out. She's like, Jensen told us to hang out. Let's hang out. And they talk through schedules a little bit and they can't really find anything that works. So he's like, hey, why don't you go on a run with me right now? And she's never run before in her life.
She says, you run on purpose?
Right. So it's February, right? It's really January, February, cold in wherever they're at. No, New York City. So very cold. And she somehow scrapes together a running outfit. I would 100% full-scale panic if I had never worked out in my life and I was supposed to go meet this guy in whatever people wear to run in the winter.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure I would have some sort of thin, stretchy pants that would be appropriate for other weather, but
underskirt leggings.
Yeah, but she doesn't have shoes. She doesn't have, as we find out in great detail, a good bra. There's going to be nothing moisture wicking. She probably doesn't know that she needs moisture wicking.
No, and bing boom bong, running in winter. If you are not wearing winter clothing, moisture wicking clothing, and you're working out outside in winter, it is going to soak up the water, and then it's going to make you much colder because it's going to freeze against your skin. So that's safety tips.
I'm chafing just thinking about it. Ugh.
Yeah, but she doesn't really she finds clothes. There's a narrative about she's trying to find the right clothes to wear, but she doesn't freak out in the way that I would have a full-scale panic attack over this.
Well, I think it's part of her. She's so work-focused, career-focused, grad school-focused that clothes just aren't. I don't know that she would think about that. Although I would think as a scientist, she would think, what will the exposure of extreme cold temperatures do upon a perspiring human figure? I don't know.
She doesn't even bring a hat, right? He brings a hat for her.
It's the first of about 800 instances where they use the word beanie. And I have to say, not a sexy word. And they use it all the time.
What word would you use? Stocking cap? I feel like that's worse.
That is worse. That is work. Toque? Toque gives you like a cute Canadian vibe.
I've never even heard that word before. How do you spell that? What is that?
Toque. It's like a hat, like a jaunty. Well, now I'm questioning myself. I just know.
All right, Canadians, this one was for you.
Toque. Did I just misappropriate your culture? Please let me know.
Maybe.
I feel like beanie is something that kid who went to grade school with you, who always had the runny nose, like that's what he wore in the winter.
I guess I use skull cap. I think I say skull cap. Is that the same thing? I don't know.
Yes.
Anyway, so she's decided she's going to go meet him and she's going to like observe his ways so that she can figure out how to like meet people, like get in and get out like Will does, player style. And so she's like, okay, I'm going to be like a secret agent. Like I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get out. So she runs up to him and gives him a hug that she is like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm giving him a hug. Like it's very like introspective. And they have a little cute interaction here where he gives her a little hat and he calls her Ziggy and she's like, oh, I haven't heard anyone but my family call me that in a long time. And he says, well, what do your friends here call you? And she's like, Hannah, but he continues to call her Ziggy.
He wants no part of that. Oh, Hannah, that's nice. Okay, anyway, Ziggy.
And he's going to do like a 1.5 mile loop. He usually does 6 miles. And she's very confident of like, yeah, that sounds like something I can do. I can run 1.5 miles. That's so super easy. And it kicks her ass and her boobs hurt real bad. And she's wearing the wrong shoes and the wrong clothes. Also on this run, she calls him the pussy expert. This character's very blunt in a way that's it's kind of off-putting and kind of heroic.
That's exactly how I felt about it. I feel like if this was a character who was doing this for attention, I'm going to say this wild thing to see what you say, she would be insufferable.
Oh, totally.
Like if she was a pot stirrer with that, I would have put this book down immediately. But she just says it. And there's a lot of later on talk about like porn. And I was watching porn the other day. And again, if she was somebody who was like, I'm going to see what he says about this, but she's just talking. She wants his opinion. She's curious about it. And it makes it tolerable in a way that I think in literally any other circumstance, I would be like, oh God, this girl, no.
Because I think it stems from her social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, not anxiety, but her social maybe ineptitude. Like, I think that she just doesn't realize that maybe it's crazy to bust out with these things.
Yeah. And thankfully, Will loves it. You know,
Yeah. But she says once that he told her that he was the pussy expert when she was 12.
And I love this. He's horrified that she remembers that, which I would think so. Can you imagine if somebody said, do you remember when you were 19 and you said, oh God, no.
No. But I can also imagine being 12 years old and a man that is like the hottest man I've ever seen in my house tells me that he's the pussy expert. I would remember that for the rest of my life.
I'd be cross-stitching that on pillows. Like that would be a big motif. And she actually says,
on a pillow.
I feel like that exists. Someplace on Etsy that exists. She
Probably
says, you were a 19-year-old hot friend of my brother who joked about sex in our house. You were practically a mythical creature. Which, I mean, that, and I think that actually sets the stage for everything. What he said when she was 12 became how he is for her. And that leads to all the frustration with the miscommunication and misunderstanding that just persists through 90% of this book.
Yes.
Literally 90%.
He takes off his shirt at the end. I think he's taken off one shirt, but the other shirt rides up or something like that. She's checking out his tattoos. And so it's pretty clear they're attracted to each other. He gets it. She gets it. And then she blurts out, are you dating anyone? And he furrowed his brows as if he hadn't quite understood what I said. And after a moment, he said, no. His adorably confused reaction helped me forget how inappropriate my question had been. Do you really have to think about it? He says, no, smartass. And no, there isn't anyone I would introduce to you by saying, hey, Ziggy, this is so-and-so, my girlfriend. And so she's like, oh, he's dating a lot of people then. That's what that means.
And she calls him on it. What a very specific evasion.
Yeah.
But I like, she ends this chapter with confidence because she is aware that he is aware of her boobs. She is very aware of his awareness, and she feels like if he is that aware of this, I can handle him. You know, if he is that like, oh wow, then I'm going to be fine here. And if I can, if I can have my own bing boom bong.
What is it? What is it called? Call it something.
Nerd Lingo with Sara.
Nerd Lingo with Sara. Bing, boom, bong.
So he would never say, hello, I was a fucking D&D pro, Ziggs. He would say, hello, I was the dungeon master in my gaming group in college. It felt a little like somebody had read, I should bring up D&D, but they didn't know. They didn't know. If you want to be the champion, you're the dungeon master. That's what you are.
Yeah. So at the end of this thing, he says that he's going to fix her up with Chloe and Sara, his male friends, girlfriends, so that she can go get like clothes and have lady friends in the city. Next chapter is Will goes to lunch with his friends, and we kind of get his side of things of what happened on the run. We learn about his two not girlfriends, Kitty and Christy, which I found a little bit annoying that was their names.
Oh my God.
I feel like whenever there's a side piece in a romance novel, they're named like Kitty or Candy or I don't know, right?
There is, and there's even, we hear more of their names later on. So there's Kitty and there's Christy and there's Laura and there's one more and it's ridiculous. And it's just like, can we not? Can we have better names? But is there really a woman named Kitty out there who's panting after him? It's just so... If we have any listeners named Kitty, I apologize. Right now.
Well, I mean, it's a fine nickname. It's just like, she was described in such a dismissive way of like, oh, that's this girl named Kitty and I see her weekly for sex, but she wants more and like, ha ha ha, her feelings. Like
Yeah, no, same. I feel like they chose sort of intentionally cheerleader-ish names. And I don't mean to say that about the names, but it's just there's something sort of extra girly and the IE ends. And by the way, it was Kitty and Laura and Natalia and Christy are the women that he read. Natalia.
Oh God.
It's just like what I have to tell myself is Christina and Lauren didn't ever want to use those names as heroines. And so they felt like they were safe to use for his side pieces. And so they were like, we will never write a Natalia. So let's make her one of the side pieces.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah. But and also they're so similar.
I think they were made to sound inherently slutty. Like it's okay that Will's doing this. It's not okay that Natalia is doing this. Sorry if we have any Natalias. I don't think we do.
I feel bad, but I really feel like those names were kind of. It wasn't like Jane. You know, it felt like a little implied judgment. You're right. I don't know. And also they were really similar. If you're going to have two side pieces, I feel like as the dude, wouldn't Kitty and Christy get messed up in your head? And wouldn't you want a Susan and a Kitty? Or a
Susan and a Kitty. Yeah, I think so. If it's going to be as arbitrary as his weekly fuck schedule seems to be, why not go out and grab a Susan, just so you can tell everybody apart?
Get you a Susan.
But so he talks about his inner monologue is like, Kitty and Christy and Laura and Natalia, they're okay, but like I'm sort of getting bored with this whole just sex thing, and maybe I'm getting bored of sex altogether, which is probably surprising if you've read the first two books, I would think.
Exactly, and that's where I think the development felt really rushed here, but the author was relying on pre-existing knowledge of the character.
Yeah. And then his inner monologue talks about how he was so captivated by Ziggy on the run and how halfway through the run he had just kind of like outright stared at her and looked all at her boobs and stuff. Mostly because she didn't have an appropriate bra on, and so they were everywhere.
Did that was hard to read. Just the honey.
Well, just the painfulness. I don't know. I have really small boobs, so I wouldn't really know what that's like, but I imagine it's terrible.
Oh, it's terrible. Yes, no, let me tell you some things. It's terrible. I pressed my hands to my boobs. It phantom aches. Oh no. Oh no. Oh.
But I also I've seen women with large boobs running without appropriate bra gear, and it doesn't seem to me to be sexy. I don't know. I'm not into boobs really, but that doesn't seem like a sexy movement of flop, 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 flop.
I mean, it does. I can't imagine it makes you feel sexy. It just doesn't seem like to onlookers it's going to be. Right. I'm not a runner, but I have read that well-endowed women will sometimes wear 2 sports bras. That's how much it takes to strap them down. And way later on, there's some scene where they're outside and they've been running, and Will sees that her nipples are erect and perky and pebbled and whatever else. And it's like, shouldn't she, if it's November or if it's February and she's in, like, actually has the good running bra at this point and she should be bundled up for the weather, what? She should have more support and you should not be seeing nipple there, right?
Yeah, there should be like a straight up coat. She should be wearing a straight up, like a running coat, but like a coat. Like,
she should have layers.
Cold.
She should have. I'm not trying to nipple shame anybody, but like, no, they can be erect under there. But I feel like we shouldn't be able to see him if she has the proper gear, right? Outside.
Yeah. So he's gonna send her on a shopping trip with Chloe and Sarah. It's Sarah, right?
It's Sarah.
I got confused because you're Sarah, and I was worried that I had the wrong name.
If I may, Sarah spelled the right way, which is no H.
Correct. Let's see. And also, she's texting him. He sets her up on this friend date, and she only has a flip phone. And the text she sends is awesome with a 3 in the middle, and then all one word, I can't find the space key, and then the equal sign, and all one word, I will call you. I thought that was so endearing.
It was cute, and it also made me dive back into the book to figure out when this was published. So this was 2013. So it's a little bit more reasonable at that point that somebody would still have a flip phone, I think. Because we were still doing, remember the terrible texting where you have to press the 1 button 8 times, and then the 2 buttons?
When I met David in 2014, he only had a flip phone. He finally caved like 2 years ago, but yeah.
Was it the principle of the thing, or did he just, like, what was he?
Yeah, I think it was the principle of the thing. I think he still is like, oh, I'm chewing my phone, because now he's like on Reddit all the time and like, you know, is in his phone. And I think he didn't want to be in his phone in that way. And I also think he didn't like the maps app because he liked to know his way around town without the maps. Whereas I lean on that so hard. I can't even call it a crutch because it just is my legs. Like, I can't go anywhere without it.
If I'm honest with myself, probably the biggest game changer for my life is having a map in my phone that tells me where I need to turn so I can stop being lost 50% of the time. My husband, however, takes it as a point of pride to take every weird ass backcountry road that we can when we're going someplace, and not, I can do this. I'm just going to head due east and we'll get there. But what, dude? I've got a map on my phone. No, I got this. I don't understand.
One of the many times in our early dating relationship when I thought that David was actually going to murder me, not because of anything he did, but just because I've always got murder on the brain.
You can never be too careful or prepared.
Well, like our first date, I didn't let him pick me up because I'm like, I'm not getting in some car with some guy I met on Match, you know? And then like maybe date 3 or so, I let him pick me up. And then the way home, he was not going the direction of my house. And I'm like,
oh no.
Okay, we're going somewhere else. Like,
are you taking me to the woods?
Yeah. Well, have I ever told the story about the shooting pigeons on the podcast? I don't know if you've listened, everyone.
I don't.
I'm asking you. I'm on the podcast. I should know.
I don't remember hearing it.
Okay. So this is probably date 2. He's going in the exact opposite direction of my apartment. And I was sitting there with my eyes closed being like, okay, this is going to happen. Like, what's the plan? Like, I've got my cell phone, like, low.
I've been training my whole life for this. I'm ready.
I know. Me too. And so I'm like, okay, I need to alert him at some point, but I'm not going to alert him until I'm prepared, you know? And so finally I'm like, you're going the wrong way. And he was like, what? And I'm like, you're going the wrong way. And he's like, oh, yeah. Sorry. I'm like going to my apartment. I'm sorry. He just flips a U and goes. And I was like, okay, all right. We'll turn the emergency off of my phone. We'll like, you know, like all the things I was doing. So then date like maybe 3 or 4. He's like, oh, you're in the Army. You probably know how to shoot guns. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you want to go out and shoot clays with me sometime? That's a nice activity date or whatever. So I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea with a guy I just met to go out and shoot clay pigeons in the middle of fucking nowhere. Because we don't have we have shooting ranges in Alaska, but there's no sense in going to an actual...
Is all of Alaska a shooting range?
Yeah, pretty much the whole place is. So you can drive maybe 20 minutes out of town and there's no one there. So... that's what we do. We drive like 20 minutes out of town and we're on our way out there. And of course, because of our jobs, we joke about murdering each other a lot. Like, maybe the first night I spent at his house, we had a very long conversation about John Wayne Gacy. Like, we're always kind of in this realm. So I look in the back of the cab, and there is duct tape, a tarp, and one rifle. And I didn't bring my own rifle. He said he'd bring 2. And so I just kind of casually was like, where are the clays? Like, where'd you put the clays at? And he's like, oh, they're in the bed of the truck. And I'm like, aren't they going to break in the bed of the truck? Because we're on like gravelly, you know. And he's like, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, okay, well, where's the other rifle? And he kind of looked back and he's like, oh yeah, that must be in the bed too. And I was like, I'm going to fucking die. And I look at my phone and it's like already no service. I'm like,
no
this is
service.
it.
No.
Like, this is how I go. Like, at least it's going to be a gun. Like, great. But then
It'll
we
be
shot
fast.
clay pigeons, and it was a super nice date.
At what point did you tell him you thought that was curtains for you? Like on the way back, or was it later?
I think it was like maybe a year or 2 in at least. Yeah. And then, so he then told me on the first date when he met me just like at a restaurant downtown, he was like, yeah, I wasn't sure you know, like I had a gun on me because, you know, I don't just meet strangers. And I was like, you had a gun on our first date? I let you walk me to my car. And he's like, yeah, that was probably a real stupid move, you know? I was like, oh my God.
Oh no.
Anyway.
So early in our relationship, Jason was taking a serial murder class as part of his undergrad.
Like a how-to?
Like he's a criminal justice major. And he actually was able to do a phone interview with the detective who caught Eileen Wuornos. Like that was his final project.
Ooh,
so
that's
it was yeah. But so we're on the couch one night, we're just watching TV, and he leans over and says, you know, I match many of the hallmarks of a serial killer. You want to hear more? And I was like, no.
Good.
No.
Yay.
but yeah, you know, white male, above average intelligence, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, murder was actually kind of a hallmark of ours too. What is that?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a hallmark of cool people who are in good, lasting relationships. So if you haven't discussed in depth any serial killers with your husband,
what are you even doing?
Yeah, you're not doing it right. Okay, so where are we at? We lost it.
We're on chapter 2. I don't know.
Chapter 2, 37 minutes in. Get ready, guys. Okay, so but the thing is, there isn't a ton of like plot in this book.
It is all interior, and it's probably 15% describing how hot the other person is, which I'm there for. Yeah, I'd like to hear about Will's lean muscles. That's great. Oh, yeah. If this were in the hands of a less capable storyteller, this I would,
So he tells Sara and Chloe to go shopping with her. He specifically is like, hey, get her a sports bra because she needs one. He's really awkward about it.
It super amuses his bro friends.
Yeah, because I think he's on the phone with one of the girls and the bros are there in person. I don't remember. They might all be there. But Sara laughs and says, oh, yeah, we're on it. Bras to support the supple breasts of your non-girlfriend. God, you're such a fucking pig. I was like, yep, that's correct. So then I forget where I think he has lunch with her then after she gets all her stuff, after she goes shopping with them. And she says a bunch of sex stuff to him, to include, she's asking him sex questions. I'm neither a virgin nor a woman trying to get in your pants. We can discuss sex. And is this where she talks about porn with him and stuff? I
think that's a little bit later, but she does have so many awkward sex talks with him.
There's so many. And this is the one where she talks about hymen regeneration.
Yes, you're right. They have awkward sex talk in my notes here. I do love, she mentions that she got a breast reduction because it's not all fun and games. You know, your bra straps hurt, you got back pain, blah, blah, blah. And he's so horrified. Yeah. They're in the way of what? My hands, my face. Don't you blaspheme in here. She didn't mean it, Lord. Promise. I love that.
So she has this idea where this is going to be the new hot surgery for ladies is to get their hymen regenerated so that men can get the virgin experience. I wrote that she has a strong misconception about what a hymen is for a scientist, but, you know, whatever. But I'll say again, this is maybe the third time on the podcast. The hymen is a scrunchie, not a piece of cellophane. But that's Bing Boom Bong forensic science with Erin. That's all that paragraph is, right? Moving on, chapter 3.
Pretty much.
All right, so they go on another run. He says that eventually that she's going to have to stop running with him in the morning because he needs to train for this big race. I think it's a triathlon, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a triathlon. Okay. He's hiking, biking, bear hunting or something is what she thinks it is.
Oh, I have in my note, they see Kitty, but I don't remember that. They see Kitty?
They do. Running, and Kitty is there running as well.
I see. Okay.
And she's friendly, and she's beautiful and perky. I want to say red-haired. And it's what you think when you think, his side piece, Kitty. She's your basic nightmare, Kitty.
Yeah. I don't remember what this is a callback to, but it says, we walked in silence for a few moments and I looked back over my shoulder, understanding dawning. She was the non-girlfriend. Her boobs were, wow. She clearly knows Jesus. I don't know what that was a callback to. Will completely cracked up and wrapped his arm around my shoulders. Let's just say finding religion cost her a lot of money.
I think that is Will saying, they've joked about, could you find Jesus in my boobs? And Will says, yeah. I can find Jesus in your boobs, yeah.
Yeah, so that's that. And then she invites him, there's going to be some kind of like work mixer. And she asks him to come with her to the work mixer. And she doesn't seem to talk to any of our work friends. They just kind of sit at a bar and talk to each other.
Yeah. I picture what her coworkers say about her. Oh my God, Hannah. Oh, she's never going to come. Don't even bother inviting her. Why?
Fair.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then she comes in with this like remarkably hot guy and then just doesn't talk to any of them. They have crazy awkward sex talk. This is the porn conversation. And he starts thinking of her as Hannah instead of Ziggy for the first time. So
this is big.
They fall a little bit in love. Yeah. I mean, this book is so internal that it's hard to recap. Like, he starts thinking, something about her made me feel hungry, like I wanted to be as honest and calm about everything in my life as she was. I wanted to know Hannah, to hear her thoughts on everything. I paused, my fresh beer partway to my lips, and registered that I'd thought of her as Hannah. It sort of felt like letting out a long-held breath. Ziggy was Jensen's sister. Ziggy was the kid I never knew. Hannah was this uninhibited, self-possessed woman in front of me who I was pretty sure was going to effectively wreck my world. So it's all kind of like that, guys. It's kind of like 50 Shades Freed in a way where it's like they go shopping, they go on a jet ski, they go on a plane, they go on. But the difference is this is like super well written, and they're not the thoughts that they're thinking about each other aren't what a cool plane, what a neat jet ski, should I buy some jewelry or not?
And also the underlying relationship is healthy.
Yes,
and
yeah, that's true. We want to hear these two's thoughts. We don't want to hear the thoughts being thunk in 50 Shades. Okay, so then she goes and hangs out with Sara and Chloe again.
And they're kind of protective big sister mama tigers who say, he sees a lot of people, right? So I like that they're loyal to Will, but they don't want to see this nice new person get hurt. And so I super love that sister dynamic, but also, Will's our friend. He's a good guy, but he's probably not going to be maybe what you're, and when they realize, okay, she knows we're good. It's cool.
But they also kind of convince her to bang him. They're like, okay, now that you know what he is, maybe bang it out because he's super hot. Yeah. So they go on a run, and then the plan is that they're both going to shower and go to breakfast. This has become their routine. And right after her shower, she gets a, "What are you wearing?" text from Will. And I think it even says, "Hannah, what are you wearing?" There was something where he didn't call her Ziggy. And it says, "I looked down at the towel around my otherwise naked chest and typed, black jeans, yellow top, blue sweater," like what she's planning on wearing to breakfast. And he says, "No, I mean, insert innuendo, what are you wearing?" And she's like, now I was really confused. I don't get it. I typed, he says, "I'm sexting you." And she pauses and she's like, "Oh, I get it. Sexting. That's really clever."
You're so smart, Will. Oh
my God. Sexting before. And he's like, "That's not a new term." And now he wants her to say something dirty. So they have a full-on sexed session.
And can I say, for a novice sexter, she busts out. Sometimes when we're running and you're controlling your breathing and lost in the rhythm of it, I wonder what noises you make during sex. And I gotta say, that's an A+ on your first sext. Well done, Hannah.
Yeah. He's like, way to just dive in there. I'm gonna need a minute or 5. And she's like, I mean, I'm sorry, I can't believe I said that. And he's like, you're kidding me. That was like Christmas. Clearly I need to up my game. Hold on, I might need to stretch first. And then he goes, your tits looked great today. And she's like, that's all you've got? And he's like, oh, you're unimpressed? And she just types Z's. So, yeah, he talks about licking and fucking her tits. He talks about wanting to see them. She says something about it's hard to type with one hand. La, 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 la. So,
and
now
she's
they've got
all
to see each other at
JK,
breakfast,
LOL,
though.
or is she?
Yeah, really. He's like, what? Are you touching yourself? And she's like, gotcha. But like, then she does.
Yeah. And then who's ready for breakfast?
Oh, God. And then they have like a super awkward breakfast because now they don't know what to do because now it's like it's kind of crossed that line.
But I will say he knows her breakfast order, which is adorable. And also
very sweet because she's a little late because she had to get herself off before she got there.
I mean, time management is one of the things she's working on. And if I can be Mel here with the ears, lemon pancakes with berries.
Yeah, that sounded really good. Agree. Yeah, so I forget what she does, but she like snaps at him somehow, and I don't remember
I mean,
how.
she kind of always does.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep track of which time.
Yeah. So
well, he refers to helping out Jensen's baby sister, which would irritate.
That's what it is.
That would irritate the most placid of personalities, I think. So
yeah, he pushes it, shoves it hard back into the friend zone, and I think that's what annoyed her. So she invites him to a grad school party that she's going to have at a grad school apartment, and this is the best chapter in the book, hands down.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So his chapter starts off, something has changed. A switch had flipped in the past few days, and now there was a leaden weight between us now. It had started a few mornings ago on our run when she was quiet and distracted and fallen to her side when her leg cramped. Oh, yeah. Did they have a leg cramp thing?
And there was where
he like
stretching
massaged her leg.
and massaging of things.
Afterwards at breakfast, she'd clearly been irritated, but that was easy to read. She was fighting something. She was annoyed in the same way I was, as if we should be able to wrestle against this magnet that seemed intent on pulling us to a different place, a non-friend zone place. So, yeah, she invites him to this grad school party. He's like, is it gonna be a rager? Like, because he knows exactly what this is.
I'm older than Will in this book. I cannot imagine going to a graduate school party in a graduate school apartment with graduate school, like, cleanliness. Is that, I don't mean to. Yeah.
Well, he even describes what, let me see here. He describes what it is when he
it's
walks
like
in, and he's
milk crates as shelves and
no furniture. Everybody's wearing like hipster style clothing. He's like, there's a big bowl of every alcohol. Punch, like everything. He's like, oh yeah, I remember what this is.
I've done this.
She comes in, she gets a drink, and he's like, you don't usually drink. Are you sure you want a drink? Which it seemed controlling at the start, but then I realized what he was doing. Because it was somebody else that had offered her a drink and she took it, and he thought that maybe she was just kind of appeasing the host, maybe?
Yeah, but I also had a little moment of, like, she can say no herself. I mean, it sounds a little bit like, hey, what do you do? You don't drink. What do you do?
Yeah. So she has a drink of it, and then she
And it's important to note that drink is plum flavored, because that's where we get plum.
I can't with this.
If you read Christina Lauren, you just have to embrace the fact that everybody's going to have some sort of fruit or floral nickname, and that's just Max's name for Sara is Petal, and that's what we call her. And we just deal with it. We deal.
But did Petal rise organically from the text? I felt like plum was so forced because it was a plum flavored drink, and it wasn't even like. We hear in the narrative, in the internal monologue, that this is plum flavor, but no one says, here, Hannah, have a plum-flavored drink. This is a plum-flavored bowl of stuff. You know what I mean?
Also, would a graduate school party described thusly have a plum-flavored drink?
No, and I don't know if I drank a plum-flavored drink, if I would be able to identify it as plum if it were grog at a grad school party. You know?
Correct.
Everything tastes like Hawaiian punch. It's not... that's so specific.
But
it would just be fruity.
I guess flat beer is a bad endearing nickname, so we got plum, and that's good.
Loved
hey, flat beer.
If he called her flat beer or hey PBR, I think that would have been a much. But I'm different than them. Okay, so she is like, hey, let's go into this room, and he's like, all right, I guess. And she takes his hand. She's very nervous. He thinks, little did she know that I'd follow her down this hallway, even if it caught fire.
Oh, so good.
She goes into a random room. They don't know whose room it is. Locks the door.
Okay, I feel like what's about to commence here just is party foul after party foul on behalf of the host. Some of the things that go down. I feel like locking yourself into somebody else's room. And then there's, at some point later on, we're going to talk about her cleaning herself and discarding the tissue in a trash can in the room. And I'm just like, could you?
Not in a bedroom trash can?
Not in a bedroom trash can.
Yeah.
But we're jumping ahead of ourselves. Party foul. That's all I'm saying.
But I think that if you're going to have this party at like a college or a grad school level, you expect people to bone in the bedrooms.
That's true. You put some sort of disposable blanket down. Like I can bleach this. It's fine. Just drape everything.
That at like your grad school party, you like wrapped your bed in like cellophane or something. We know what's going to happen.
Listen, this is just some cling wrap. I'm putting it down on everything that is porous. So if you just be a buddy and stick to the cling wrap, that would be great.
You can hear people boning on like the crispy tarp that you put down. Crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. Okay, so she says, this room is Vegas. What happens here stays here. Or rather, what says here is stayed here. And it says she was tipsy, but she's only had like 2 drinks of this drink. So
I mean, they're trying to play the she has low tolerance angle, but
sure.
In some of her alcohol and sexual interactions, she comes across like the 12-year-old she used to be in some ways.
And maybe that makes sense.
And when she's with him, maybe she kind of goes back to that. And again, I think it explains how she responds to him. But my note on this chapter, as much as I liked it, was I almost, and I will never say this about any other heroine ever, I almost wish she'd been a virgin. I almost wish all of this, show me how to do it. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Like, she's had sex with other people. Yeah. So
yet, like, hasn't done most things.
Yeah, so she doesn't, and jumping ahead, she doesn't know how to put on a condom, and she doesn't know how to do this, and she's tentative about that.
She doesn't know how to be on top. She's like, I've never been on top before.
So I get that it wasn't fulfilling sex. I understand that, but I almost wish she's just like, I was too busy with school and everything else to ever do this. Somebody's got to teach me. Why not be the sex fantasy of my childhood? So it's odd to me that they gave her, some experience, but then she's just like this babe in the woods, like, this is what do I do with this?
Yeah. And it would make more sense too, because he, from his side, has some of those like virgin-y, like, I'm the first guy to do this to her anyway. Yeah. So it's like, we already have the gross part of the virgin trope. Why not go all the way?
I know. I don't love the virgin trope, so it's bizarre to me that I actually kind of wanted it here, and yet
it would just make more sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That said, this is super hot.
Yeah. This is an incredible scene. But so they want her to be tipsy, even though she just had 2 drinks of this thing 5 minutes ago. And even if 2 drinks did get her drunk, it wouldn't happen that fast.
Yeah.
Toxicology wise. Anyway, okay. She says, I want you to teach me things, not just about how to be around guys, but how to be with a guy. I think about it all the time, and I know you're comfortable doing this stuff without being in a relationship. And she trailed off, looking up at me in the dark room. We're friends, right? I knew with absolute certainty where this was going and murmured, whatever it is, I'll do it. You don't know what I'm asking. Laughing, I whispered, so ask, because he definitely knows what she's asking. Yes. And she's like, I watched another movie, she said, a porny one. And when the guy came, he pulled out of her and he did it on her as if like she's never fucking thought about that in her life. It's crazy.
And also, hasn't she said she watched porn before?
Yes.
Isn't that like, you can't not see that?
Yeah,
in porn.
and his answer is, that's pretty common in porn. The guys don't come inside the women. Like, it's got to be a special porn for that.
It's got to be. There is a whole section on Pornhub for that. You can find that. What are you doing? Yeah.
And it's got to be its own section. I don't know. So she wants to give him an HJ. And so he's like, fine by me.
Sure.
And so they do like a standing up hand job situation. It's super duper hot for a hand job, I was
going to say, I mean, for a hand job, they write it well. Yes.
Yeah, this is about as hot as a hand job can get.
Yes. And I got to say, coming on your partner is not typically a thing I appreciate and enjoy reading about. Like, to me, it can be a little... It is... They wrote this well. Like, they wrote this in a way that I was like, okay, I get the appeal of it here. I don't get the appeal of it in a lot of, I guess, porn situations, right? It feels a little bit more like, why always the face? Just why? But this,
like this Amy Schumer sketch that was like coming on somebody's face, and the best reaction you're ever going to get from a woman is like, okay, all right, and then she goes and washes it off. It's like, that is the 100% best reaction you're ever going to get from a woman in real life is, oh, all right. Yeah, I don't know. It's fine. It has to be written well. Like, we've read a few that was like, spilled his seed on me. We read satiny liquidy jets. That was a lot. But this is good. I don't remember what the terminology was, but it was good. He
calls it his orgasm, my orgasm on her skin. And I at first that was odd. Like, I'd not heard that expression before, but you know, as you start thinking about like hot seed of my whatever, there isn't really a great option. So sure. Orgasm. Sure.
And then he finger bangs her, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
She's waxed, and he's like, what?
Yeah,
I did not expect this.
She went and got a wax with Chloe and Sara. And so that's that. They clean up. They throw the tissue in the garbage can.
And somebody else's trash can't find a toilet.
I don't know. I feel like bedroom garbage cans are often unlined.
Yeah.
I'm like, ugh. But then they go back to the party, and some guy named Dylan asks her out.
And she says yes, because that's what she's in it for. Get in, get out, secret agent.
Get in,
learn
get
how
out,
to do
secret
this.
agent. Figure it out. Because she knows that he's not going to be your boyfriend. So she goes on the date. She thinks about Will pretty much the whole time. And then and he's like texting her while she's on the date. Date ends at 9. She goes over to Will's house. So she just kind of finds herself over at his house.
She's just there. And we get a description of his house, which is kind of nice. Like boyfriend goals, I would think.
Yeah.
Wood floors, bookcases packed to the brim with dog-eared novels, genetic texts, entire wall with comic books. Like, that's...
They know who they're writing for.
Yeah, they do.
They know their audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so she just kind of finds herself over there. She's like, the date was good. We had a lot to talk about. But she kind of doesn't tell him that she was thinking about him the whole time. Yeah. And he's kind of like, well, the date ended at 9 p.m., so it couldn't have been all that great.
Okay, but my question is, it is a work night. What time do people in New York, if they're running and then showering and then going to breakfast and getting grief for dates that end at 9, what time does the workday start in New York?
Well, there's a time where they just like sleep in bed twice, where she just doesn't fucking go to work. Like, is it on her own schedule or whatever? She can just go to the lab whenever?
Maybe. I don't know. The whole work thing was a little nebulous to me, but...
I try to put myself in like an early 20s position of like falling in love with something, like that initial infatuation with somebody where you don't care if you're on the phone until 3 a.m. and you have to get up 2 hours later because you're like, this is a boy. And I feel like that's where they're at.
Yeah, he's ever so dreamy. I'll be tired at work tomorrow. It's fine.
Yeah. So she goes over to his house and they dry hump at his house.
I love that, you know, she's still the teenager who's dreaming about, and he's getting like the handies and then the dry humping, and he's fine with it. It's cool. It's fine.
Yeah. Then the next thing that happens is Will runs into Dylan at a coffee shop.
Oh, no, not a coffee shop, a Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts.
It was so specific, and it's like, it's not, Dunkin' Donuts isn't depressing enough. You gotta run into fucking
Fair.
Dylan.
Dylan is I think probably a pretty handsome grad student, but I guess next to Will, he's pretty diminutive and very grad student-y. There was a lot of they said he kept bouncing around on his toes.
He's like a puppy.
Yeah, I know that guy. I think I married that guy, actually. But a lot of toe bouncing, a lot of just happy guy. Hey, what's up, man? We're both dating Hannah, huh?
Hey, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
High five.
Exactly. And Will postures a little bit, but it's not aggressive. It's not bad. Dylan tells him he's going out with Hannah again. Will goes over with his friends, Max and Bennet, and they realize, he's definitely, in agony, in love, and she's dating this other guy.
They actually describe him as a lovesick rain cloud, which I adore.
They're like, oh, you're miserable. It's so
This is
cute.
awesome.
Yeah.
Because he's been a total jerk. I shouldn't say jerk. He has loved giving them metric tons of grief as Max was falling in love with Sara. And so they got all the player who's like, oh man, some woman's got you wrapped around her finger. Dude, what? That's no way to live your life. So for them to get to give it to him is delightful.
Oh yeah, this is the description of Dylan. He had that slightly vibrating feet bouncy thing going on where he seemed constantly excited about something. He nodded a lot and looked at me as if I was someone to be treated as a superior. But he's a lot older than him, so I kind of understand that.
I think he was in a suit there, wasn't he? So, I mean, there's a stark difference, so you can, yeah.
When she's on the date with the second date with Dylan, he says, I was happy that Hannah was out and having fun. That was the weirdest part about it. I wanted her to have what she wanted. I just wanted her to want me and only me. I wanted her to come over tonight, admit that she would prefer to just fuck me and quit this dating nonsense, and that would be that. It was ridiculous. And I was the world's biggest asshole for thinking it, especially since in the past I'd made 100 girls feel like I did now. But this is what I wanted. Self-awareness.
He's got it.
Yeah, he's got it.
But I love that Chloe and Sara show up to babysit him because they know Hannah's going on the date and they didn't want him to be alone. So Bennet said you were a hot mess. Hot mess means pad thai, chocolate cupcakes, and beer. And so they show up with that because they're good friends. And it does mean that. Absolutely it does.
And I like that he has, I know they're just the partners of his friends, but it's nice that he has female friends that are actually genuinely his friends. And there's no weirdness there.
Yeah. But they make a really, really, really good point. They ask him, you're hung up on Hannah, but you haven't let your other two lovers know that you've got feelings for somebody else. And he's like, nah. And that is one of my obviously you kind of have to do this for the plot. You know, he can't cut them loose because you have to have the big misunderstanding toward the end. But they're 100% right. And if he would just listen to them, you have feelings for her, let the other women go. It's only fair to everybody. And he's like, nah.
No.
Also, I'm so creeped out by everybody talking about Will's lovers. His lovers. Will has lovers. I know. There's no other good word for it, but lovers. Ugh.
I feel like anything else you would call, I had the same problem, but then I went through my Rolodex of words and all the other words were demeaning toward those women. There's nothing
But lovers.
Okay, so she tells him, she's like, okay, third date is probably when I have sex with him, right?
Yep.
They're on a run and she's like, this is the sex date, right? And Will's like, yeah, I mean, sure, but if you want to have sex with, there's no rules to this.
He does get a little alpha-y at times. If he forces you, don't let him force you. All right.
You've met this guy. He's not.
It's Dylan.
Yeah, it's not going to be like that. I mean, she might like him, but he's not going to be like, now we're having sex now. He's not going to Hulk out. I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there are some guys that present that way and do Hulk out, but it just seemed kind of out of nowhere in this book. Third date, she goes out on a date with him. The whole time she's like, I will not text Will. I'm not going to text Will. Not going to text Will while I'm on this date with Dylan.
Here's
I'm on a date
not
with Dylan.
Texting Will. Just not. Yep.
She brings Dylan back to her apartment.
And she texts Will to tell him that.
Yep. She's like, we're headed Yeah, we're headed back to my apartment for sexual intercourse, basically. And she kisses she kisses Dylan, and it's not very good. And she's like, yeah, I don't think it's going to work out, man. And he's like, fair enough, and leaves.
Well, and he actually says, oh, is this about Will, right? Oh,
yeah.
no.
Oh, yeah. He does.
Yeah,
He does.
I guess if this is about Will, well, tell him congratulations. And I love that probably Dylan gets it too. He's like, yeah. I'd want to bang the smirk off of that guy too. I get it.
Yeah, understood. So, okay, then we switch to Will's perspective. I had a big problem with this.
Uh-huh.
She texted Will, he's coming back to my apartment. Will walks to her apartment.
And then stands outside on the street, staring at her front door.
In the window. That's so weird. And he sees them in the window, like the silhouettes of them. Weird, Will.
Yeah, he sees that they're upright, and he's like, oh, good, they're not laying down. Excellent. But
yeah.
Also, she might want better curtains.
Yeah. He's just standing there. He's like, my hands formed into fists at the memory of the text. The words burned into my brain and the image of her with Dylan. And it's like, he thinks about going off to a bar, and he's like, no, the last thing I need right now is alcohol. And if I was 2 blocks away from an apartment, then I might as well be home. He's saying he should walk home.
Yeah,
but how long would I wait there? Until she texted me again, until morning when they emerged together, rumpled and smiling over their shared memories of the night before, of Hannah's perfection and Dylan's lame inexperience. And it's like, you don't even know that this guy has an experience. I'm like, cool
breaks. Yeah. Also, I feel like I need to point out, he says, I'd run out of the house, no gloves, a too light jacket, and running shoes with no socks. No.
And he says, okay, that's when I told myself, you've crossed a line, you need to find your way back to the other side. True. Like,
good.
At least he's self-aware.
Yes.
Then he sees Dylan leave, dejected. And then she texts him that, hey, Dylan just left, where are you? And he's like, I'm standing outside your apartment. At least he didn't lie to her.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, he could have been like, home, I'll be there soon.
On my way. And then hid behind a tree for a while or something. So then they have a conversation where it's clear that he's jealous. And she's like, are you jealous of Dylan? Because you've been seeing Kitty and Christy this whole time. I mean,
and he doesn't tell her.
Yeah, he doesn't say, because he's kind of stopped seeing them. He hasn't broken it off verbally.
Yeah,
but
he hasn't since they first went running in February. He just kind of breaks it off, but he doesn't. And all he'd have to do is say, actually, you've been keeping me so busy, I haven't seen. Like, he doesn't even have to say, I love you. But all he has to do is say, I really haven't been seeing them, actually. And that would have gone a long way toward open communication. Oh my God, if they had just talked to one another, this book would have been half as long. But
and this book needed to be half as long because it was really, I don't know if it's because I had to read 2 books this week, one for Mel and one for you. But I was just like, why? This thing is like 450 pages long.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I don't mean this in a insulting way to the book, but nothing happens in it.
It could have been, and it's interesting to me because this is not a self-pub, and that's not a slam against indie authors at all. No. But this went through an editing process for Gallery, I think, is their publisher. And so I am surprised that an editor, an agent, somebody involved didn't say, we have a lot of the same fight over and over and over, and can we streamline some of these scenes into one, because we're kind of treading similar ground. So, but yeah, no, I'm with you. The conflict doesn't change all that much. The conflict doesn't evolve.
They
it's
just kind of
always
circle each other. So he goes over to her house. This is where they have sex. It's on, right? This is where they have sex, right? Yeah. Okay. We learn that she doesn't know how to put on a condom, which I'm like, how is that possible? I guess guys just put on condoms for
I mean,
themselves.
if her experience was that bad, it sounds like she wasn't a big active exploratory part of it. And so I guess so. And I will say, at first I was like, oh, come on, she doesn't know how to, but they turn it into something kind of hot. Like, she finally puts it on,
Yeah.
and she exhaled in relief, lying back, pushing her hips to me, but with an evil smile, I pulled the condom off again and tossed it away. Gritting my teeth through my agony, I told her, again, don't be so tentative. Put the condom on my dick so I can fuck you. She stared up at me, silver eyes full of confusion, and finally they cleared as if she'd been able to hear my thoughts. I don't want you to have a single second of uncertainty. I liked that.
Nice.
That was the only way to redeem that for me.
And then she rips the condom wrapper open with her teeth and gets real sexy about it. Which, if Mel were here, we would have to talk about not ripping condom wrappers open with your teeth. But we don't
Bing,
have
boom,
to.
bong.
We don't
Insert
have to.
15 seconds of silence where we all imagine what Mel would say.
Sex safety with Melody is not a segment in this one. Rip all the condoms open with your teeth that you want to. Don't really though.
Use the sheep spin. Put it with lubricant that's going to erode it. It's great.
Oh man, she's squirming right now listening to this. Okay. All right. So, yes, they have sex. It's great. Once they get naked, they do the thing where they say hi to each other. It's the weirdest. I think that's like the weirdest thing. Hi. We're naked now. Hey.
Hey.
Then he goes and showers. She goes down on him in the shower. They do doggy style in the shower.
He says to her, I wanted to show her how fucking good it could be if there was no rush, no need to do anything but this for hours and hours. And I just have to say, please do not have sex with me for hours and hours. No. There are things I enjoy doing for hours. Those things are reading books and watching Netflix. But anything with like that level of friction, hours, nope.
You can read books and watch Netflix while you have sex for hours and hours. You've never tried that before?
Your multitasking skills are better than mine.
Let's see. Okay, so they shower, they do more sex.
Sex is real good.
Sex is real great. Good stuff.
And then the freak out commences.
After the shower, then they have a big fight.
And this is where on my podcast, the DCTV Report, find it where you find other quality podcasts. My mantra is talk to each other. If people would just talk to each other, we would have no problems. And so if I understand where Hannah's coming from here, because she is all like, oh, we had sex, but it's cool. You're still here making me coffee. It's cool. You're making me breakfast. It's cool. It's cool. I don't need anything. It's cool. We're cool.
Yeah, she's
it's
like,
cool.
This is easier that we're having coffee in the morning. And he's like, I'm not sure I'm getting you.
Easier.
And she's like,
I'm making you breakfast.
Yeah, it's just easier to do this part now, the awkward I've seen you naked part, rather than later when we're trying to remember how to act with our clothes on. And he says, devastating line, you don't think all that highly of me, do you?
Yeah.
And she's like, please, I know I think you practically walk on water. I just don't want you freaking out or anything. Thinking I expect you to change anything. And he's like, I'm not the one freaking out here. And they have a whole fight about, basically she's saying, we're going to keep it casual. And that's really rubbing him the wrong way because he's not feeling very casual. And then during this fight, Kitty calls him, which is not the best time for that.
And she says, I feel like I've been changed by this, but I don't expect you to change. And he's like, who exactly am I, do you think? And it's the thing is, he internally is not the guy that she thinks he is. That's clear. He is not telling her that. I mean, I think he's showing her a little bit. Is this a love language thing? Is his love language actions? And she, like, I don't know what the deal is, but he is saying things and doing things that indicate this is not, I'm not trying to hustle you out the door. I am here. Right. I'm saying these things. And she's just like, no, it's cool. You're a player. I get it. And if he would just say, this is feeling a little different for me.
Yeah.
Just 5 words.
And if she would be honest about her feelings, if either of them would have been honest, this book could have been done at page 250. But instead we have 200 more pages to go. So the next morning he just doesn't go on the run, which is horrifying.
This chapter is epic. So he blows off the run, and so she goes for the run anyway without him.
Yes.
And then calls him, and then Erin, what does he do?
He calls her Ziggy.
He calls her Ziggy. And she calls him on it, thank God. Erin is so upset about this, she's sneezing. Like, that's how bad it was.
Sneezes. Yeah. And she, credit to her, she immediately responds, so I'm Ziggy today. That's interesting. And he's like, no, fuck, I just don't know who you are this morning. It messes with my head to call you Hannah. And she's like, get over your man angst, Will. We had sex. You're supposed to do this kind of thing better than me. I'm not asking for a key to your apartment. I'm not even asking for a repeat, you egomaniacal jerk. And with that, she hung up on him.
Which, fair. And he has good reasons for it. He didn't want her to show up and be ziggy like, nothing happened. It's fine. We're cool. It's fine. He just doesn't explain it to her.
Right. So then he goes to breakfast or lunch or something with his bros and, And he tells them, I think I'm the kitty. Yeah, I think I'm kitty. I think I want more, and she doesn't want more. Then they go running again, and she's really weird, and he's like, oh, hi, Hannah. And she's like, oh, so I'm Hannah today now? Like, this is like whiplash. So they kind of make up, right?
They do. They do. And they have more sex.
Yeah.
Well, this is where she falls. Yeah.
Yeah.
She falls, and so he carries her back to his place, tends to her knee, and she freaks out because she hasn't shaved and she's got a little leg stubble, and she's like, oh no, I didn't think you'd see my legs. And I thought that was adorable and relatable.
Yeah. So they have sex, and this is the one where they just don't go to work. This was, I could not, the more they had sex, it was great writing, great sex. The longer this went on, I was like, you have to get to work. Like, I don't understand. It's 11 a.m. Like, I don't. I was having like cardiac arrest over this.
Will, I think, is his own kind of department at his job.
I don't care. Like, no.
At least call somebody and say, hey, we're not going to make it in.
Your worth is defined by your productivity. And right now, you are doing nothing. I was, yeah. This is the sex where he writes that Nietzsche phrase on her. Mm-hmm. Okay. I found this weird. Did you find this weird?
Well, I found this to be like humbling in a way that, so they're both science geniuses. She's biochem, getting her PhD. He's Dr. Sumner, something science. They're STEM people, great. And then they start quoting Nietzsche at each other. Like, leave the humanities to the rest of us. Give us something. Honestly.
You were just pissed that they're know-it-alls.
They are. They know. I get it. Oh my God. You could quote Nietzsche. God is dead. Great. We can all do that. No, I actually really like this. I like the thought that, I mean, he's tattoo guy. The tattoos are meaningful to him. They're important. And so for him to put his handwriting on her and something that I think is a meaningful quote, I found that kind of hot, actually.
Oh, okay. And I was not about it. I was like, why are you writing on me? I don't. Weird.
She liked it. It made me wonder. I'm surprised that the epilogue isn't she gets that tattoo. Like, surely she gets that tattoo. They don't include that.
Yeah, I assumed she was going to get that tattoo before the book was over, but it didn't happen.
Yep.
So then they have a discussion where he says, I know I'm supposed to be the one who knows what I'm doing here, but I'll admit that Saturday night was different for me. Her eyes softened, shoulders relaxing. I continued, my voice quieter. It was intense, okay? And I realized that sounds insane, but I was a little taken aback by how you were so casual about it the next day. And she looked at me like I'd sprouted the head of a lizard from my forehead. How was I supposed to be? Weird, angry, in love? So she's really doubling down on the this is casual to me sort of thing.
Yeah, he says, I have non-sexual feelings for you. And she's just like, nah, nope.
Yeah. She gets pissed and she storms off into the shower, basically. And is like, I have to go to work. Because basically that wasn't the deal. They were going to have a casual relationship, and now she's all tied up in this. So he waits for her to get out of the shower, and he was like, that wasn't cool. You stormed off and left. And she's like, into the shower. Like, it's not like I left. And then they kind of make up.
Kind of. He kind of lets her go and says, okay, we both need to think about things. That's fine. He says, who would have thought I'd fuck it up with a girl by falling for her? I wanted to get the hell out of there, and I wanted to climb out of the bed, pull her back. Maybe we both needed to think about a few things. So,
oh, I know what happens. So he says, he's trying to be such a sweet cinnamon roll. He's trying to be nice to her. He says, I've never known a woman like you before. And she says, well, statistically speaking, that's really saying something. And she
so far over the line. So far over the line.
All at once, the fight seemed to leave him, and I watched his shoulders fall, the air leave his lungs. He stared at me for a long beat, eyes losing their heat, and they were just flat. And then he left.
So here is where I started drawing an analogy. I feel like this is, you could almost say it's Pride and Prejudice, because her prejudice is he's a player. He was a player when I met him. Mm-hmm. He's still a player. And she cannot, like Elizabeth Bennet, she cannot get past this idea of, I know who this person is. And even though he is saying and doing everything, except I'm not seeing those other women anymore, saying and doing everything that indicates I'm not a player, I want to be with you. She just cannot get over that initial prejudice she had. His problem isn't pride, it's emotional paralysis. So emotional paralysis, wow, these smart people are sure acting stupid, just talk to each other already, the Will and Hannah story. I mean, like that's the...
But I was thinking about it, and I feel like if I were in Hannah's shoes, I probably would have behaved the same way. Like, yeah, if it was somebody who I grew up being this unattainable guy, I think I probably would have put up the same guards. Yeah. I was thinking about it like, I think I also would not be convinced he wasn't just messing with me if he had been that guy for my whole childhood and early adulthood. So I don't know. Anyway, so they're in a fight. She tries to go over to his apartment. He doesn't buzz her up, even though she knows he's up there. And she starts texting him dirty jokes, and that works. And she goes upstairs. She says, I think the idea of you wanting more terrified me. There have been so many women in the past. I can tell you have no idea how many hearts you've broken, maybe no idea how not to break them. I like to think I'm too smart to join those ranks. So they have kind of a discussion, but they still don't tell each other what they want.
Yeah. And then they bang
just
it out
sex.
again.
Yeah, the thing is, every time they get to the point where they're going to like talk about it, then they just bang.
Also, she also calls her sister, and I think that's a chapter 13 thing. She calls her sister.
Yeah, she does.
And says, and we haven't really talked about this, but her sister had this brief hookup with Will one of those summers when he stayed with them. And then her sister, after he left, just walked around like a moody, lovesick idiot because he broke her heart because it was Will Sumner, and she knew moments of bliss, and then he was gone. And so that's another thing that has shaped Hannah's understanding of him is he's this heartbreaker who destroyed my sister, right? Like she loved him and he left. And so she calls Liv, her sister, and says, I'm seeing Will. And Liv is like, that was nothing. That was 2 seconds of my life. Yeah. That was, I was upset that summer because I was getting bad grades and like that wasn't.
You inflated this in your memory.
Yeah.
They, after that sex, I think is when they go out for like drinks with his friends. So Sara and Chloe and Max and Bennet. And in that conversation, he gets they're very zeroing in on them and being like, you guys are into each other, loo la la. And so he drags her out to the dance floor. They dance, they go home and have sex again. This is the one where he puts honey all over her.
Okay. So we are recording this right after the episode on the red has dropped. Yes. And I feel like the red introduced people to some hard limits. Yeah, I discovered my hard limits here. Yes. And that is running shoes without socks and putting honey on your clitoris. No.
But you didn't discover any hard limits from the red?
No,
you're like, I'm good with all of that.
No. Bring on the goat, satyr, 3-person stool
slave auction,
with the
riding crop. That's fine.
That's no
grandpa,
problem.
Grandson, double penetration. That's fine. But when you want to put
whatever,
running shoes without socks, that's it.
No, I just feel like honey would take a good scrubbing to get all the residue off. And there are certain parts of you that you just don't want to take exfoliating scrub and a loofah to. Oh my God.
Yes. At least honey is one of those foods that's not going to give you like a bacterial infection.
True.
But even if I accidentally drop honey on my hand, I'm like, full crisis mode. Like it's sticky. It hurts when you like scrub it off because it's so sticky. I just can't. I don't think that would feel good.
And I want to say this is one of the scenes where she falls asleep, having been thoroughly sexed up, sweaty, semeny, honeyish, and she doesn't shower first. And I'm just like, what about the sheets?
I
sheets.
Well, you haven't heard the episode on the red yet because it hasn't dropped. I discovered 2 hard limits in the red. One is, believe me, there are a lot of things to find hard limits for, like a minotaur raping you. One of them was somebody coming on your back and then flipping you over and having missionary sex. I was like, no.
Let me wipe off first.
Yes. And the other one was masquerade masks. I was like, this is so creepy. So believe me, I'm with you on this. I can't. The
only thing I've heard that is worse than this is, and yeah, he doesn't know I'm telling this story. I hope he's not standing outside of the bedroom listening to me. My husband, in one of his early experiences, had brought I'm going to say girl because it was high school, back to his place, and she was expressing a certain willingness to allow food items to be placed upon parts of her. Sure. And he ran to the fridge like, what do I have? What do I have? What do I have? What he found was unsoftened cream cheese.
No.
Apparently, that does not spread well.
No.
Straight from the fridge. But it was the best thing he had. It was not a great introduction
also,
to...
It's a savory. It's a savory.
I don't understand what else was in that fridge. Surely,
I can understand that panic though.
Like he was like, wait, there's a girl here and her shirt is off. I have to roll with this.
I have to lick something off of her. What can it be? Oh man, that's
dairy, hard dairy products. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not averse to food.
Oh yeah.
But here's what I'm saying. I'm not averse to food like having a sandwich, but I'm averse to food on me. Like I don't want food smeared on me, which I feel like is everyone else's probably flipped. Like you can maybe do a cream cheese or a whipped cream,
no.
I'm not going to have a sandwich during.
Yeah, I prefer to not have like a bowl of popcorn in the crook of my arm while this is happening. That's not a thing.
Yeah, see, that sounds like a great idea to me. But we've already established that my multitasking is at a higher level.
On point. I also am sad Mel is not here to talk about what might honey do to a condom. I actually had that question. Would that is that a bad thing?
Yeah,
I don't know.
This is maybe the first time that I've ever kind of missed sexual health with Melody. I would really like that. Oh, man. You're missed, Mel. Okay, so also during this, she had talked about one time when she talked about porn with him early on, she was like, those women in porn are acting, no one actually acts like that during sex, which is true. Like the women in porn are acting. They are actresses. That is what they're doing. But during this sexual encounter, she's like, please, please, please. And he's like, oh, are you begging me? And she's like, Will, yes. And he's like, so those girls in the porn movies you love, I whispered, smiling as I rocked my hips. We both groaned when the crown of my cock slid over her taut rise of her clit. The ones who beg say they need it. I tilted my head, jaw tight, as I resisted the urge to sink into her. Would you say right now that you need it? Like, I really liked that scene. Anyway, so...
Oh, and then right after that, she drags her nails down so roughly, she leaves a trail of fire red marks from sternum to navel.
Yeah.
That's some...
He really likes biting and nails and that kind of thing.
Teeth and blowjobs, yep.
She wakes up to being tangled up in these honey-soaked sheets, and he's got coffee in each hand. It's nice. They have sex again pre-shower, so she's still sticky.
I feel like it's that scene in The Parent Trap where they booby trap the stepmom to be in the tent and they cover her with honey and shaving cream. Like that is how Hannah wakes up.
What I thought of was heavyweights. Do you know heavyweights? And they strap, I think his name is like Lars, but he's definitely like a German fitness guy, to a tree, and they cover him with honey and a bear licks it off. It's the same movie, basically. Camp, you know.
Bears show up in either case.
Oh man, outstanding.
I will say this next morning is when she returns the favor and takes a marker and puts her initials on his hip bone
and
then puts her thumbprint, which is, I thought, super hot.
I liked that. That made more sense to me than the Nietzsche quote.
But of course, Hannah being Hannah, she gets weird about it. Because Will, fuck, he hissed, eyes fixed on the black mark. That's probably the hottest thing anybody's ever done to me, Hannah. His words plucked at something raw inside my chest, a resurfacing of the knowledge that there were others who had done hot things, others who made him feel good. Well, yeah, he's an adult man.
And he's telling you that you're the hottest of them. Like, if he had said, wow, Hannah, that's the third hottest thing a woman has ever done to me, I get it.
Yeah, that ranks below New Year's Eve 2012.
Exactly. Okay, so then she invites him back to her parents' house. Is it a holiday?
Easter. It's Easter.
For Easter. And he obviously knows her family very well. He lived with them for over a year, I think. So he's like, okay, but won't it be weird? Will they find out that we're doing sex to each other? And she's like, no, it's not going to be weird. Maybe you can sneak into my childhood bedroom and we can bang it out. But other than that, we're just going to be normal people. And guess what, guys? They cannot be normal people.
It takes them all of 5 minutes to be just banging it out in the guest room with people walking around in the hallway. But
and wait, no lock on the door.
Before we get to that, can I just say, we reached a light at Broadway and the car stalled again. I looked out the windshield and then back to him smiling as I ducked beneath his arm and went to work on his zipper. Who needs the back seat? I am not a New Yorker, but Broadway is busy. Aren't there a lot of like cars and pedestrians and mounted horse policemen on Broadway?
Yeah.
I am, again, I don't want to shame anybody's like kink or whatever, but that just feels like I'm picturing the tourist with all the, the Broadway, like.
Was this a blowjob or a hand job?
I assume blowjob, but I guess it was. A hand job would make me feel a little bit better about that.
A hand job I think would work.
Yeah. I feel like she talked about two.
Yeah, I think it was a blowjob, though. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
I mean, it's fine.
Listen, she's real horned up this week. So they're going to be normal people. They've already done something in the car on the way over. They get
Twice.
there.
They make the point.
Yeah. So he's just bringing his bags into the guest room, and she like shuts the door, no lock, and is like, "Let's bang it out in here, no condom." Like,
and everybody's cool.
And she gets okay. So they talk about no condom a little bit. This is the first time he's ever had sex without a condom. But she's like, "I'm on birth control. We know we're clean. I know." Oh, God, it's like she's in my head. I can't now. This is, oh, my God, I'm afflicted, you guys. They have not been tested, but they are assured that each other is clean. I was fine with it. Melody would not be, but she's not here. And then he, like, splooges a little bit on her skirt.
Not a little bit. Fully splooges.
She's got a splooge stain on her skirt, and she's like, I want to wear it.
Rinse it.
I want to wear it to dinner. I kind of like it there. And I'm like, what? Are you? Be honest with your feelings. You're acting crazy because you're keeping all your feelings inside.
That is not a rational response to Easter dinner with your family.
Right.
That's not okay.
And right after he comes, Jensen, her brother, knocks on the door and is like, yo, bro, you in here? And he's like, oh, yeah, just a sec.
And well, I'm changing. Don't come in. Yeah. And then he goes down on her and she finishes in like 3 seconds. Your brother was just in the hallway.
He might come in at any moment.
And she's just like, nah, it's good.
I think the door might be open now. And he finds a little Jesus figurine. And one of them puts it in her cleavage and makes a joke about finding Jesus in her cleavage. He's holding it for sure. And Jensen comes in and he's got to yank their parents' Jesus statue out of her cleavage and throw it against the wall and think that the brother's not going to know what's up.
Look, I think we probably have various degrees of religiosity represented in the HB fandom. Sure. But can we all agree that putting Jesus in somebody's cleavage on Easter weekend in her parents' house is maybe not the most respectful tack to take?
I think we can all agree it's not the most respectful. I don't think that everyone hosting the podcast right now would refrain from doing it.
I feel like if it was your own Jesus, but it's her parents' Jesus.
I'm sorry. She's there, though. I feel like if it were me and a person who hadn't grown up in that house, I think I would have a little more respect. But she's she's a member of that household and she's cool with it.
That's true. That's true.
If you're with a party that like has some kind of tie to the house, I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
Okay, so the rules for Jesus cleavage
are
member
one
of household.
party must be a member of the household. Yeah. So there you go.
And the joke has to be worth it. It has to be real funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you have to not throw the Jesus against the wall and break it. That's part of it too.
Yeah, yeah. Also, Will describes her mom as such a good hugger, she could have been from the Pacific Northwest. And I have to ask, is the Pacific Northwest known for hugs?
I think it's because he's from the Pacific Northwest. I think what he's saying is New Englanders are cold.
Okay.
And where I'm from, people are huggers. I don't know.
That was a weird, I felt like if he was from the Midwest, that would make sense because you get like the Midwestern, like, hey, I don't know. It was a strange, I just did not know that the Pacific Northwest in any iteration has a reputation as good huggers. I thought that was interesting.
Right. So they go down to dinner and they hear her parents talking in the kitchen and her mom is saying, don't just stick the tip in, Johan, shove it all the way in there because they're doing something with dinner. So everybody's laughing. They have dinner. Everyone says Hannah looks really good. Well, Ziggy.
Well, they
all
say
call her
Ziggy. Yeah.
Because she's been running a lot. So they're like, oh, you got a haircut. You look thinner. What is it? And then Will, like an idiot, goes, maybe Hannah's just happy. And then they're all like, what? Like, literally no one has ever called her Hannah in this family, to include Will. And then he freaks out because he doesn't realize he did it, and now he did it. And then he just decides to double down. And then he says, did you know that Hannah has a picture coming out in Cell? I hadn't been particularly smooth. Her name came out louder than any other word, but I went with it, smiling around the table. I loved it.
And I also love, it didn't help that Jesus' tiny decapitated porcelain head was watching me from the sideboard, judging. Right. He knew. He also talks about wanting to, I wanted to reach under the table with my leg, slide my foot over hers to get her to look back at me, but it was like a minefield of non-Hannah legs under there. I loved that.
So he sneaks into her room. They have condomless sex a second time. At the end of this, she has sex on top for the first time. Yay. They have to switch to the floor so that the bed's less creaky. We've all been there.
We've all been there.
We've all been there in our parents' house. Oh, God. Or somebody's parents' house, anyway. She finally says, I want you to not have any more women. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you need to tell me that. She says, I want to know if there are going to be other women. And he's like, you need to tell me to not have any more women. And then she does. And then everybody's good. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody has feelings for everybody. We're there. And it is page number 362. And I'm like, let's wrap this up. We don't need another 100. But apparently we do.
Apparently, him saying, I'll be yours every second if that's what you want. You just have to tell me, was not enough of an indication for her that this is what. And they had amazing sex. That sex they had was emotional. It was that, like, we are bonded, we are here, we're together. Yeah. It was love making. Thank you.
Which we can also say when Melody's not around, because she hates the phrase love making. It makes her curl up into a tiny shell and die. But I'm not too fond of it either. But that is like her word.
She wouldn't love it that they were love making without a condom.
Oh, that would be even worse. That's her hard limit. Okay. They're ready to go. She's like talking to everybody in the family, saying goodbye. She goes to find him. He's in the shed with Jensen, her brother. Jensen's like, I want to know what's going on with you and Hannah. Or Ziggy, what's the deal here? And he's like, well, I'm seeing a few women, but she's definitely not one of them. Don't worry. And I'm seeing a few women, and one of those women I'm going to get serious with, but like definitely not Ziggy. And she overhears this, and of course she's devastated, which is like, but this is what you asked for. And she knows that. She's self-aware, but like, of course he's lying to Jensen. Like, that's the whole point of this weekend, is to not tell her family. Anyway. So then they have an awkward ride home, and then she sees his phone light up on the way home, and it says something like, hey, XOXO from Kitty, I can't wait to see you on Tuesday. Are we still on for Tuesday? Then Hannah says to Will, hey, can we talk about some stuff on Tuesday night, and he says, no, I have a work meeting Tuesday night. So she's pissed. Which the second one I can get. The overhearing him talking to Jensen, I think that's dumb. She could have just been like, hey, I overheard that. That's lies to Jensen, right? And he would have been like, yeah, and then they would have been solid. But the kitty thing, I'm on her side for.
Yeah, same.
Then he comes over Tuesday night after work and is like, I have some time if you want to talk. And she blows him off and says, yeah, this is over. I should have been honest with you about my feelings or lack thereof. I just got carried away at my parents' house and we're done. And he's devastated.
He caught the feelings, you know?
Yeah.
He caught a bad case of emotions.
And he says, I wanted to think of her brush off tonight as a glitch, a scary curve that would soon straighten out, and that my relationship with her wasn't over before it even started. Maybe it was her youth. I tried to remember myself at 24 and could really only see a young idiot. So
Fair.
He's trying to be like, maybe she didn't mean it. And then he goes out with his bros and talks it out.
Well, and here's where we get some, I think, not fan service, but we advance the plot on books 1 and 2 a little bit, which is Chloe and Bennet are planning their wedding. It's high stress. And the big one is that Max and Sara are having a baby. So,
and he kind of realizes, this is what I want. I want this with Hannah. I need to like try with Hannah. And so he texts her, you're all I can think about anymore. And she's like, oh, this is torture. Like,
did he send this to the wrong woman?
Yeah.
He probably should have said, you're all I think about anymore, Hannah. That would have been helpful.
Yeah. So she goes out with Chloe and Sara and basically has the same conversation with Chloe and Sara that he had with Max and Bennet, except that they're like, he's a dog. Like, leave him. There's another guy, George, who's outstanding.
Yeah, George is a part of book character. 2, and he's a lot of fun. He has the super hots for Will. So that's why he's like, wait, you're banging Will Sumner? Oh, my Lord.
That makes more sense.
I started this scene annoyed because they meet at a speakeasy where it's not marked, and if you happen to pass by during the week and there wasn't a crowd of people lined up, you might miss it. And I got to tell you, Peoria has a speakeasy. But
it's terrible.
Oh, you have to pull a rope and give a password. And I was trying to meet Tanya when she was in town and some of her other friends there, and I couldn't find it, and I couldn't find the rope, and I didn't know the password. And I was like, please just let me in so I can overpay for some fussy drink and give my money to somebody with douchey arm garters. Just let me in. Put a sign up.
But it's also not great when you get inside the Peoria speakeasy. Like, it's not wonderful or anything.
Correct.
The drinks aren't insane, you know?
Yes, it's busy, it's loud. I'm just old. I'm just old and cranky.
What's great when you come to Anchorage to visit me is
100% yes.
The Anchorage speakeasy is great. Because it's just
really,
it's a telephone booth in a coffee shop. You pick up the phone, you tell them how many are in your party, and they tell you how much of a wait it is because they don't let in more people than there are chairs. And it's a quiet, nice, it's a good place to meet up with people. But it's just, you might have to wait a little bit if you're there on a Saturday or Friday night.
If there's adequate seating, if I can talk to people at a reasonable volume, I'll wait for that.
And then they give you a password. You go up there. They have a little slidey thing. And they're like, what's the password? And even if you're like, I forgot, they still let you in. And it's usually like a nerd. It's like usually a Harry Potter or like Star Trek sort of reference, which I can get behind. And then you get in there and there's going to be seating for everybody because they only let so many people in. It's dimly lit, great music, incredible drinks. And it smells like cloves. It's like they took oranges and cloves and like it's very well scented in there, which I'm all about.
This sounds worth a trip to Anchorage.
Yeah.
All right. I'll let you know when I get my ticket.
It's only like 3,000 miles. Okay. So now is going to be the big half marathon that Hannah has been training for, apparently. I kind of missed it, but apparently she was training for a half marathon this whole time.
I think she said if she was going to run, she wanted to have a goal she was running toward.
Yeah.
Because she's goal-driven. That's what she does. So it kind of makes sense. I will say, she walked 10 blocks to the start of the race. That would be my race. I'd be like, yeah, I walked 10 blocks, bitches. I'm out.
I know. One time I was lining up for the Disney Marathon and I had been standing. You had to line up at 3 a.m. and the race started at like 5. And I'm like, I've already been standing for 2 hours. Can this be it?
Done.
Like, do I have to run 26 miles now? Like,
Can
2
I
hours
get
of standing
breakfast
is.
now?
Yeah, exactly. My friend that I ran it with, we were so nervous that this was so. The Disney one is particularly early because it's so many people. And a lot of the girls were afraid that they weren't going to be able to take their morning poop before the marathon started, which is important because you're going to be running until like noon.
Yeah.
And so a couple were able to do it. There were a couple that weren't. I later found out that one of my girlfriends had to poop at the start line pretty bad and like went off into a ditch to poop. And then later found out that ditch was pretty much in full view of like a lot of people. But after she pooped in the ditch, a lot of other people went down there and pooped in the ditch. Because they've got porta potties, but once you're lined up in your corrals, you're there. You can't go back to the porta potties.
What I'm hearing is if you are not participating in that particular run, you should not visit over that next day or two because there's going to be some ditches that need to be cleaned out.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't poop outside in Disney World. Period. The end.
No, in the universe of places on this planet, Disney is number one in places you do not shit.
You can't shit in there. You can't die in there. They do not allow it. All right, that's a whole other segment. Okay,
conversation.
All right, so they do this race. She decides she's still going to go to the race. When she shows up at the race, Kitty is there next to Will. Rough, pretty rough. Then when they're lacing up their sneakers and stuff, Kitty comes over and is like, hey, I always wanted more with him, but it makes sense. Like, you seem pretty great and blah, blah, blah. So then she figures out that he had ended it that they hadn't had sex since like February and that he ended it with her on Tuesday night.
And she actually says, he's in love with you. And if you're as amazing as he seems to think you are, you won't blow this. And I have to say, this Kitty ex machina, Kitty just shows up and Hannah listens to Kitty. Hannah's not listening to Will.
Yeah,
Hannah's not listening to Sara and Chloe. She listens to Kitty. She listens to Kitty.
Then they get done with the marathon. She's got a lot of endorphins. She now knows he's all about her. They go back to her house and have lunch. She says she needs to shower. He goes into that shower and has sex with her. And I at first was like, get out of that shower. This is her post half marathon shower. This is all Hannah. This should not be your thing too. Also, she's standing up and she doesn't want to be. Don't make her have sex standing up. But then he lifts her up, so that's better.
So he lifts her up. She wraps her legs around his head and holds onto his head, and he's in the shower. That sounded like a slip hazard.
Yeah, it sounded very slippery for sure.
Yeah. And I assume they'd be a little weak and trembly from all the running. So I feel like you're going to fall, and it's going to be a tangle of limbs and like split scalps on the porcelain.
Well, because on the line he picks me up, I wrote good because I just ran a half fucking marathon. So thank you for picking me up. But it seems like he would be shaky too. I mean, no one does 13 miles and is just fine.
Yeah. He's holding himself up and her up. I mean, I guess he's training for the triathlon, so he's probably okay.
Yeah. He happens to be a romance novel hero, so they can pretty much do whatever they want.
This is his personal triathlon. Running, fighting, fucking. Triathlon. Bam.
Yes. And so that's the end. And then there's an epilogue where they're on their way to Chloe and Bennet's wedding, and, they're in love, and it's sweet.
He texts her and says, hey, I'm going to propose to you soon, FYI. And it's kind of adorable. Mm-hmm. But they are finally honest with each other's feelings at 91% in. 91% in, they finally say, I like you too. You know what? No, I love you. 91%.
Yay.
But yeah.
It's a great book, though. I would highly recommend it. The writing is, I agree with what you said before. The writing is so strong that the lack of really external plot and the hugely internal conflict is so rich and so well described and such lovely language. And then, of course, the sex scenes, that's good stuff. All right. Sarah.
All right.
Do you have a lady love?
I do. Okay, so I am a TV person. I'm a freelance TV writer for EW.com. I thought rather than dinner and a movie, that's fine. You're going to be listening to this in the winter. I assume it's going to be cold.
Yes.
So let's do booze and a bingeable TV show.
Okay.
And so I recently discovered Not Your Mom's Strawberry Rhubarb Beer, which is this sweet, tart. It says allegedly it's a beer, but it's just this sharp, fruity, alcoholic drink that is the prettiest shade of pink. It's adorable.
Are you drinking it now?
I am.
You were drinking a pink liquid.
This is, yes. And honestly, it's because I drank a couple out of the bottle and I didn't look at the color. And I saw online that it was pink and I was like, before I say it's actually pink, I should check it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
And so I opened it today. Let's not look at what time it is that I'm drinking this because,
Whatever.
It's fine. It's a holiday weekend. Yeah. So I'm saying pair it with, and I had a long list of possible TV shows that I think would be things that listeners would enjoy very much, but I'm going to go with the Lizzie Bennet Diaries on YouTube. That is a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice, 5-minute increments at a time over the course of 100 YouTube episodes. And it is all told from Lizzie's perspective, and she interacts with all the people from Pride and Prejudice that you know and love, modernized to today. Bingley becomes Bing Lee, a Harvard Medical School graduate.
I see.
Adorable. And the actresses, the lead actress is great. Everybody's wonderful. So you bring in these other characters. By the time Mr. Darcy comes on screen, the first time he appeared, I actually gasped because you'd heard about him, and he finally appears in her video diary. And it's just like, oh my God, he's here. So the Lizzie Bennet Diaries on YouTube, 5 minutes at a time. Take the time to watch it. It's delightful.
Okay. That sounds fantastic and like what everybody's going to want. I'm having trouble because usually I do a lady love based on like something I did this week. And like, I feel like when people are listening to this, they're not going to be, I'm like, go to a fair, go to a dog park. And it's going to be like, it's December, bitch.
It's a blizzard.
But I will tell you, last week, do you know my dad wrote a porno?
No. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Wait, no. Not your dad. Not your personal Erin's dad.
No.
I
the
thought
podcast.
You were telling me
your
dad wrote. I was like, I don't think I've heard this on the podcast.
No.
Yes, I know the podcast.
No. Yeah, so yes. So you have, yes.
Yes.
Heard it. Okay. So if anyone out there has not, it's finally back after like a year hiatus. Basically, it's a British guy whose dad wrote a erotica novel, I guess you could call it, under a pen name that's ridiculous, Rocky Flintstone, and was very like authentically proud of it and presented it to his son unironically, and his son was like, this is horrifyingly bad, and got his dad's permission to do a podcast about it where they go chapter by chapter. And they burned through the first 2 books, quote unquote, pretty fast. But then his dad had to write a 3rd book so that they could do a 3rd season. I think this is season 3. Might be season 4. But it's been on hiatus for so long, and it's finally back. And this thing is, if you like our snarky episodes where we're making fun of books, but get a little squishy like we do, that there are actual people out there writing these books and trying to make a living, and like we're shitting on them, there's something real gross about that. Yeah. This is a guy that it's totally fine to shit all over because he's in on the joke. He's the guy's dad, and it's hysterical. It's really, really good. So that's back, and by the time you guys listen to this, the season's probably over, so you can listen to season 3 in its entirety.
Perfect. And I should say, I guess Lady Love Part 2 would be Christina Lauren has a couple of different series. This is the Beautiful series. All the books in Beautiful are fantastic to varying degrees. The characters are strong. That writing is thoughtful. The details are great. She also has the Sweet Filthy Boy series. It's the Wild Season series. I think Sweet Filthy Boy is the first book. That one's marvelous too. At some point, the 2 series cross over. So if you liked this book, if you enjoyed the book but think, oh, I wish it had been a little more, like external plot, something like that, she has pretty much taste for everybody. She, Christina Lauren. So I adore her. She's one of my auto buys. So that's another, not to hijack Lady Love, but part 2 of that is
I would definitely,
Christina Lauren. Check her out.
I would rush out and read this whole series, if not for obligations to read other books.
Other books that you're reading.
All right. Keeping it badass
And love yourself as much as you love plum-flavored drinks at sketchy graduate school parties.
And then being called plum for the rest of your relationship because you drank 2 drinks out of it.
You're going to be 85, and your husband's going to be like, plum!
But he'll
love
be
yourself
hot,
that
so.
much.
Yeah, that's a lot. All right, Sarah, this has been wonderful. Hopefully we have you back another time soon.
Thank you for the invitation. This was super fun.
All right, and what's your podcast called again?
DC TV Report, where we talk about all the live-action DC. You can also find me on Twitter, Sara Netzley, SaraNetzley.
All right, thanks. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Hey, you. Yes, listener, you. Are you loving the show? If so, please leave a rating and review in your podcast app. The 90 seconds you take to say something nice not only helps new people find the show, but it makes me super smile over at HBHQ. Also, I've had a few people ask, and the answer is yes. We are still doing the 5-star bribe. If you leave us a review with 5 stars, then we'll do whatever book you want. We're real deep into the list, though, so it might be a while. Lilas! Okay, back to the show.